Soon we're going to have the Global Mercy coming online. You can't help but be moved by the things that you see here. That's life-changing and it's life-giving.
Perfect. Well, hi and welcome to Mercy Ships. My name's Anne Buckland. I'm the Global Campaign Manager and I'm joined in the studio today. So to explain, the studio is on board the Global Mercy and we are using the Come On Board season as an excuse really to speak to some amazing people of the Mercy Ships family, just to find out a bit more of their stories about what drives them to keep going back to Mercy Ships, and also what makes Mercy Ships Mercy Ships. So hopefully the story today will educate those who are unfamiliar with Mercy Ships, and also for those who know Mercy Ships well, provide you with some new stories as well. So I'm joined in the studio today with Jim Paterson. Jim, how are you?
I'm doing fine, thank you.
Perfect. Now, Jim, what's your role with Mercy Ships?
So my current title is Marine Executive Consultant. I'm still trying to figure out what that is. No, actually, I was in charge of Marine Operations Department for many years. We started off 35 years ago almost on the Anastasis. I was Chief Engineer for 8 years. We lived on board with our family. 1995, we went to our office in Texas, where we established what's now the Marine Operations Department. I led that department up until a couple of years ago, when this project was consuming all my energy. So I handed over to my colleague Justin Ray, who we'd been working with for a few years, brilliant young man, so I could focus 100% on finishing this ship.
Perfect. So when you refer to this project, you mean just the small task of building the Global Mercy?
Just a small thing.
So obviously the reason for the Come On Board season is to welcome people into the Mercy Ship story, and also celebrate the fact that the Global Mercy has been built and will soon be on her way to Africa. Tell me a bit about the journey. When did you first get involved with even the idea of the Global Mercy?
The Global Mercy, yes. Well, our founder, Don Stevens, has had a dream for ships for Africa for many years, over 40 years now. And we're very privileged to be a small part of that dream. We were doing the conversion on the Africa Mercy, actually in the UK, in Newcastle, or Hebburn to be exact. And as we were nearing the end of that project, which was quite difficult in many ways, we started to talk to one another and say, you know, this conversion is great, the ship is a good solid platform for a conversion, but at the end of the day, it's a bunch of compromises. You're in a finite space and you can only work within the constraints of the hull and everything inside. So we started at coffee times really to sketch out ideas. What did we not like about the conversion? What did we like? What could we improve on? That sort of thing. And we were working with a Danish naval architect who was helping us on the project, and his company, together with us, put together a concept for a custom-built Mercy ships. And at that point, I don't think any of us thought it would actually become a reality, maybe.
Oh, wow.
Maybe in the back of our minds, we hope one day it would, but anyway, cut a long story short, we had a lot of discussions internally with our board of directors for 2 or 3 years. So this was 2007. So in 2010, the international board actually said we could go ahead and pursue building a new vessel. So we had a broker who had offered his services, Gilbert Walter from BRS in Switzerland, who had come to know of us through meeting Don Stevens in Lausanne. And so I contacted Gilbert and said, okay, we're ready to do something about this. And he was actually visiting with Stena on a building project they were just finishing in Korea. And he says, I know this organization, Mercy Ships, that could really do with your help. Would you work with them? So anyway, cut a long story short, we went to Sweden, to Gothenburg, to meet with the Stena folks. And they had a concept ferry that they hadn't been able to complete because of the world economic climate at the time. It was kind of put in the drawer. And actually, our concept and the Stena Seabird from a sort of overall ship point of view were very similar.
Oh, wow.
So we spent the next year and a bit working together to combine the two ideas, mainly the hospital. I mean, the ship part was very much the Seabird, although we did slow it down a bit and make it a little bit shorter. But the hospital came from the Mercy ship's experience and so on, and the accommodation. So then we had a tender package ready to send to the shipyards. Gilbert sent around to 12 shipyards around the world. We got prices back, and of course China was by far the cheapest. Stena had experience working in China before and actually had planned to build Seabird in China. So it made sense to focus on China. So we went over there a few times, went through the technical specification, eventually visited many suppliers that put all the small pieces on board. That was a process, making sure that they are what they say they are on paper. Not always the case. And then finally in December 2013, we got to the point where we're ready to negotiate a contract, actually we started negotiating contract in October. We signed it in December 2013.
Wow. What has it been like for you, for the impact of seeing this project through? You've obviously served time a lot on Mercy ships. You've raised your family on Mercy ships, which we'll come back to. I'd love to ask you more about that. But seeing the Global Mercy actually go to something, so you've served with Mercy ships, you know what the patients needed, you know what the volunteer professionals needed. How did it feel seeing all those touches going in? And can you describe some of them?
Oh, it really is fantastic when we think about it. And I've heard some folks think, well, we need to get this one into service and figure out how it all works. I know it's going to work. I have total confidence this ship will work because we took our previous 40 years experience, including with the Africa Mercy, and we've sort of dealt with all the issues and tried to improve upon them. The good things we've tried to make better, and so I'm pretty excited that this ship is really going to make a big difference. Of course, training is the huge issue, or not issue, but the reason for being in the hospital, right? The surgeries that we do for the individual patients are totally life-changing for them as individuals, but if that's all we did, it's not enough. When we leave, they're not really much better apart from those individuals. But when we bring on the doctors, the nurses, the biomedical technicians, the administrators from the local health service, and they have an opportunity to spend some time, a few months, rubbing shoulders with the professional volunteers, then they go back home, back to their places of work, much better equipped, and teach a man to fish, as the saying goes. And we've really focused on that in this ship. I mean, the whole heart of it is the hospital. On Africa Mercy, we only carved out 1,200 square meters for the hospital, and we still do training there, but it's a bit cramped. In the operating room, they're really squeezed in there when they've got the observing surgeons that are trying to learn and so on. In the hospital wards, the beds are quite close together. It's really packed. So here they've got a lot more space to spread out. We've got dedicated training facilities on the hospital deck. We've got room for simulators. We've got a training room that has a big wall video. They can do teaching from teaching hospitals in the US or Europe or wherever. So it's really got a great focus on training in the hospital, and that's exciting.
So when we've talked, quite often Mercy Ships uses the phrase double the hope, double the healing when we're referring to the Global Mercy. But actually, it's more than double, isn't it? It's triple, quadruple.
I would say so. Once she's up and fully running, I think it'll take a wee while to, for everybody to familiarize themselves to get the most out of it. But it has potential to be more than double. Yeah. And another thing that we've done on Global Mercy, on the Africa Mercy, because it is so space constrained, when she comes into port, it takes a long time to set up. We've got a whole little tent city, we call it, on the dock. For a lot of the screenings and things like that, for rehabilitation. On this ship, it's all done on the ship.
Wow.
So you can come into port, and within a few days, they should have patients up the gangway for surgery. Say when it's time to pack up and go, you can pack up much quicker and leave again. So All these things were thought about. And also living conditions for the crew members.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of them are here for a long time. We were ourselves on board for 8 years on our first ship. But not everybody wants to stay that long because living conditions on Africa Mercy are quite cramped. There's not a lot of private space. It's quite challenging for folk. So on here we try to make the accommodation a little bit more comfortable, a bit more room in the cabins, public spaces, some lounges for people to meet together to play a game or something. Yeah, so trying to get the whole package. The ports that we spend most of our life in are not the places you go as a tourist.
Yeah.
And often your entertainment has to be here on the ship.
Mm-hmm.
So we've had to take that into account as well when we designed it.
That's amazing. So you've learnt from the service of the
Yeah,
ship before
yeah.
to continually improve, advance, refine, etc.
yeah.
Now, of course, the Africa Mercy is still in service and very
Mhm.
much still running
That's right.
as a hospital and training centre as well. But I love the fact that for the Global Mercy, it's kind of been even more enhanced to provide that experience. What was it like for you as a family man serving on board the ship and having your family with you?
Yeah, when we lived on board, it was fantastic. The children were very happy on the ship. In fact, our youngest, when we left, was only 6. And he complains now because he can't remember so much. He's now 32, 33. And also a chief engineer, by the way. But, but the girls, they were 9 and 12 when we went ashore. So they have lots of memories.
Mm-hmm.
And none of them wanted to leave when it was time to go. The
Wow.
school on board is fantastic. The education that they receive is, I would say, second to none. They get such a life experience, and they see things that most kids never have the chance, other than on TV or reading about it, to witness firsthand. I remember as a kid in Scotland, geography class, learning about Ghana and cocoa production. There was actually a coffee bean stuck in the textbook. And our kids went to the cocoa factory in Ghana, got a bar of chocolate when they left.
Oh,
You know,
wow.
they saw the whole process, how to make chocolate. It's a small thing, but it spoils them for their lives.
Yes. Yeah, well, that's amazing. And what was it that took you into the technical side as well? I mean, when you started off in your career, was Mercy Ships even on your radar?
No, I'd never heard of Mercy Ships when I started, but I left school to become a marine engineer. I was sailing the British Merchant Navy for a while after I qualified as a marine engineer. And while I was away, well, try and cut it short, but I met this lady. We thought we would like to spend our life together. She became a Christian while I was sailing. She wrote to tell me all about it. And I thought, I need to go and hear what this is. It sounds a wee bit strange to me. We'd grown up in the church, but not really active. And when I went to college and went sailing, I had forgotten about it for a number of years. But when I went back and saw how her life had changed, the difference that it made on her, it was visible. And I thought, I need to find out more about this. And it was not very long before I realized I needed to dedicate my life to God. I went to visit our pastor, whom I had avoided for quite a long time. I told him what had happened, and he began to say, if you give your life to the Lord, He can take you and use you to do all sorts of things. I still didn't think it would be a ship. In fact, at that time, the Merchant Navy was going through a dramatic downturn.
Mm-hmm.
It was one of these world events where the economy wasn't doing very well. And our company was actually laying people off, asking for voluntary redundancies. And I thought, maybe this is a sign that I'm supposed to quit the sea and go and be a missionary, whatever a missionary is. And I wrote the letter to resign, but I didn't post it for a week. And every night I had these dreams about joining ships, but they were uncomfortable dreams. You wake up in the morning, just didn't feel good. And after a week, I thought, this is silly. Did God speak to me or not? And I can't say I heard an audible voice, but I really felt I had to resign. I actually called the company and said, am I one of the ones that's getting the chop if you don't get enough resignations? They said, no, we don't want you to leave. You need to stay here. So anyway, I thought, that's it. I'm going to do it. So I posted a letter, no more dreams.
Interesting.
And then we went to Bible college because we were very young Christians, didn't know an awful lot about Christianity. Thought we need to learn something before we do something. And while we were there, we heard about Mercy Ships for the first time.
Wow.
And even then I was thinking, nah, that's not for us. But anyway, a few more promptings and we finally made contact and said, can you use us? Sure, we need you. So we came for 2 years and here we are 35 years later.
Wow. Wow. So you really have seen Mercy Ships develop and grow. And now, as we've spoken about already, Mercy Ships is all about impact as well. It's all about lives transformed and making sure that we're there to help, or making sure that people are helped. And also, I've been hearing a lot about it transforms volunteers' lives as well. So it's not just the patients or the trainees or anything like that. But which stories stick in your mind that most kind of summarize life transformation that you've seen?
Oh, there's so many. The one that always pops straight into my mind is the very first the field service we did in Mexico, Lázaro Cárdenas. They'd had an earthquake a while before, and we had been there already for a visit, and we were back at the second visit when we joined, trying to help catch up with the backlog and so on. And we always have an advance team goes ahead of the ship for a few months to prepare the way, make sure everything's in order. And they had met this shoe shine guy in the town square. He had a cleft lip and palate. He was 45 years old, and he polished people's shoes because he didn't need to lift his head up and see his deformity. So they've finally convinced him to come on board and have the surgery. Of course, for a lot of people in some of these countries, going into the hospital's not a good idea because often they don't come back out again. But anyway, he came, had the surgery, and then the surgeon, Dr. Gary Parker, still with us. He joined roughly the same time we did. And 5 years later, Gary got a letter from this guy, but this time he's 50 years old, and he had his first kiss.
Oh, that's wonderful.
And that's just one small story of hundreds of thousands of lives that have been changed ever since.
That's
Shortly
really
after
wonderful.
that, we went to Jamaica. We had the Salvation Army School for the Blind, brought 50 kids over to see the ophthalmologist for screening. 14 of those kids went home being able to see.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, and of course that was years ago. Now we can do so much more. Cataract surgery back then would take an hour and a half under full anesthetic.
Wow.
Now we can do cataract surgeries in 9 minutes,
Wow.
and they don't even need to stay on board anymore. They come back the next day for the bandages to come off. So we've changed a lot in 35 years too.
Did you have any thought when you started serving with Mercy Ships 35 years ago that we would get to a place where there was a specifically created hospital ship?
No, I don't think so. No. In fact, in the beginning, I thought, I'm from Scotland, and we have a sort of poverty mentality there, and I thought our first ship was good training, this was good enough for us. And it took me a long time to realize the Lord wants the best for his people if they're using it in his service. So it was a process of understanding, I think, that, we don't need to settle for second best. You know, the old story about people drying out the tea bags and sending them to the missionaries. The Lord doesn't want us to live like that. He wants the best for his people if we use it in his service. And here we are now with this wonderful ship that should be good for another 50 years.
That's amazing.
As long as we look after it and remember who it belongs to.
So what's your hope for the impact of this ship?
Yeah, these days with this current geopolitical situation, it's sometimes a little bit hard to see what the future holds. I mean, who knows? But if all things being equal and we can continue as we're doing, we're trying to work ourselves out a job. You know, as we see these surgeons. Somebody was telling me just the other day in Guinea, the last time we went back, Dr. Gary couldn't understand why he wasn't seeing so many cleft lip and palate patients. It's because he had taught the surgeon in Guinea how to do these, and he was continuing to do them. So there wasn't this huge backlog that we were used to. That's where we need to get to.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, in that part of Africa, Liberia, Guinea, Sierra Leone, remember Ebola a few years ago, a lot of the healthcare workers died in that outbreak. So in some ways, there's been a little bit backtracking. So we have to go and strengthen them again and make sure they can take care of themselves, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect. And so if you were to leave with one, just trying to think, I want to ask you one more question, and I'm just thinking what that should be, because you have so many stories about mercy ships and lives transformed and the impact that you've seen. If you were to speak to a young mariner or technical person right now, what would you say to them about mercy ships?
I would say give it a try. I think we have opportunities for people to come for a short term and check it out. It's not for everybody. If you are a Christian and you know that God is calling you, He gives you the ability, the grace, the energy, everything you need to stay for the long haul. But the long haul's not for everybody. So don't think, oh, I need to go and serve for 35 years. No, most people don't. Especially the young mariners, they come for 2 or 3 months, and that's good. We have a system here it's easy to plug into. They can serve time. But we are also looking for folks that will stay around, particularly senior officers. You know, sort of, I was, I think, 30 when we first started. That's a good age for, chief engineers, captains to get their teeth into it and stay for a few years. Bring your family. That was a wonderful opportunity for me, because a lot of seafarers can't do that. You can take your wife, usually, but very difficult with the kids because there's no school. Here we have a school on board, and the kids could go to school every day, and you serve as a family. It's a great experience, great opportunity.
In fact, I told a lie. I am going to ask you another question. How did that, because you've been through the history, how did the idea of the school come about? Because it's such a phenomenal service to have for the body of people on board.
Well, Don and Dion are probably the ones that can better answer that question, because they were there right at the beginning. But right from the beginning, there were families on board. They themselves had 4 kids. And it was obvious that to survive, to have families involved, you had to provide education. So the school started very, very early in the history of mercy ships. When we came along, what was that, 8 years after the founding, the school was very well established. My wife's a school teacher, by the way, and she worked in the school on board. So it was a good opportunity for that as well.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, thank you so much for your time, Jim. It's lovely to speak to you, and it must be quite incredible seeing the Global Mercy like this.
It's great, yeah. I know when we finished in China, I actually lifted the last line off the bollard to let the ship sail away. I was saying to somebody there just before I came here, it was a bit like when you bring your kids up. You work hard and you're teaching them, training them, helping them to grow, but then when they finally get to that place where it's go off to work or go to college or whatever, you're very happy, but you're also very sad. And it was a bit like that in China. But now we come here, you can see it beginning to take shape. I'm not sad anymore.
Well, that's brilliant. Well, thank you so much for your time. It's lovely speaking to you.